Good morning and welcome to our podcast series, Voices Unmuted, Climate Change. My name is Katie Cook, President of the Student Awareness League, along with the Spokane Community College Peace Institute. We are happy to present to you our 7th visual podcast focusing on climate change. With us today, honored guest, the President of Spokane Community College, Dr. Jenny Martin, offering a welcome. Thank you, Dr. Martin.
Thank you, Katie. Welcome to Spokane Community College. We are thrilled to host this important discussion today, event around climate change. We are incredibly proud of our Peace Institute and the work that has occurred over the last decade, more than a decade, in opening minds to important topics in our community. I would be remiss, and some of you were here already earlier this morning, but I would be remiss if I didn't identify one of our student leaders, again, Katie Cook, who was just up here, who was recognized last Friday by the governor of the state of Washington for her work in civic engagement. The Peace Institute provides opportunities for students to develop as leaders and learn more about important topics impacting us locally as a community, regionally as a community, and nationally and internationally with important topics. I also want to recognize the work of distinguished Angela Wisner, who has led the Peace Institute for over a decade, where we now have over 60 faculty and 100 classes that infuse the curriculum of peace for our students. So let's recognize Angela as well. Finally, I just want to personally welcome Karin to our campus again. Welcome back. And I know you'll have a warm welcome here and an introduction, but we are so pleased to see so many of our former employees, faculty, return to us to continue in these conversations. So again, welcome to Spokane Community College.
Next, we welcome Professor Rob Vogel, Department of Communication Studies, to introduce today's podcast.
The Peace Studies Institute of Spokane Community College presents Voices Unmuted. This episode, Climate Change. Our keynote speaker is Dr. Karin Hilgersom. Dr. Hilgersom is president of Truckee Meadows Community College in Reno, Nevada. She earned her doctorate in educational policy and management and her master's in rhetoric and communication at the University of Oregon. The community college mission has been Dr. Hilgersom's lifelong passion. She's also passionate about climate action, mitigating the negative effects of global climate change, and modeling best sustainability practices through higher education. She has served on the steering committee for Second Nature, the national organization that inspires and assists colleges and universities to take action related to climate change, sustainability, and renewable energy economies. Karin began her work with community college students as a faculty member, spending 16 years here at Spokane Community College in the Communication Studies Department prior to serving as Dean of Arts and Sciences. She also previously served as president of SUNY Sullivan in Loch Sheldrick, New York. During her time at SUNY Sullivan, she made possible the Sullivan Solar Garden, a 2-megawatt solar array that brought SUNY Sullivan close to carbon neutrality. Dr. Hilgersom is active in the Reno-Sparks community, serving on the board of directors of the Economic Development Authority of Western Nevada and PBS Reno. She also serves as board chair for the nonprofit organization iCelerate, whose mission is to serve people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and the families who support them. Recently, Karin represented United States community colleges at a climate conference in Dubai. So let's welcome Dr. Karen Hilgerson as she discusses this vital topic, climate action, progress, and peace. Aha moments from Dubai.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you. Okay, well, hello, everyone. It's so wonderful to be back in Spokane. It always feels like home. When you spend 22 years at one organization, it feels great. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to Professor Scott Finney, Professor Angela Wisner, who went somewhere. Thank you so much for this invitation. I really appreciate it. I think sharing is crucial. Sharing about what's really happening with climate change in terms of the politics, in terms of the philosophies, in terms of the economics, from a direct observer point of view, will hopefully help. And just in hearing the panel, I know my horizon was expanded just a bit. So thank you, panelists. You did a wonderful job. Great stuff at Spokane Community College. How many students do I have in the audience? Raise your hand. Oh, good. Quite a few. Quite a few. The reason why that's very relevant to me is it was a small group of students. I was actually teaching part-time at Gonzaga University in the evenings, and a couple of students walked up to me and inspired me, okay? And they said, I'll never forget this, because it was probably 2006, and they said, oh, Dr. Karen, we just saw the greatest movie, and the actor was hot. And I'm like, really? Oh, okay. Tell me about this movie. And they said, it's Inconvenient Truth with Al Gore. And I'm like, whoa, Al Gore's hot? Ooh. And I had already met Al Gore once and shook his hand. I wouldn't say he's hot. He's kind of really super nerdy. But then I thought, I better go watch this movie that's got these two 19-year-old females so excited. And so I did. I watched Inconvenient Truth, and it really changed my mindset. Really changed it, just in the span of the duration of the movie. And I started to really think about the data. And not only has that data come true that Al Gore predicted, 20 years ago now or so, but it's coming truer faster than the scientists back in 2005 thought it would. And that's really unfortunate. One way to keep up with the data is there is a wonderful tool called the National Climate Assessment that's all web-based. It was developed by a team of scientists, and they really were trying to stay true to science, trying to only populate this data set with as close to fact as they could possibly get on some of the worldwide causes of climate change. And one of the things that we should be worried about, including Nevada, but even more so Spokane area, is what? What do you think is the number one danger to this region because of global climate change? Fires, wildfires. This is going to be a big concern for this area. TMCC has expanded our fire training facilities. We are training really thousands of firefighters. We're even training them from the Spokane area, which is kind of fascinating because a trained firefighter saves lives. In particular, the lives of the firefighters, but also it saves the creatures who are living in those woods, right? That can be burned down and ravaged. And I'm from Reno, Nevada now, so what happened in Northern California the last few years was devastating. Whole cities wiped out, whole ecosystems wiped out, right? And it does come back, but it takes a long time. So that's the thing that you should be worried about. But let's talk a little bit about Dubai. Today, just to give you kind of an overview, hopefully you'll walk away with the basic vocabulary. I think you're getting some of that from our really great panelists. I'd like to make some freaky links to peace, because they do abound. And I want to talk about specific actions. You heard a little bit today about individual actions. I want to focus on organizational actions, because I truly believe that's the sweet spot. Okay, moving on. What is a COP meeting? Does anybody know what a COP meeting is? Well, I'll tell you in a minute what COP stands for. But COP refers to the United Nations Climate Change Conference. So this really is the global negotiators and politicians. Okay, it began in 1992 when countries joined an international treaty. And that treaty at the time was called Framework Convention on Climate Change. And at this point, people didn't know much about what these folks are doing in the world. But by 1995, countries launched negotiations to strengthen global response. How many of you have heard of the Kyoto Protocols? Because that was the first big international agreement around solutions and climate actions. And in 2015, the Paris Agreement was reached. That made climate activists all over the world very, very excited. And how many of you saw some of the video footage of that? It's really a good meeting with some good outcomes. And it marked an international effort to keep global temperature rise in this century below 2 degrees Celsius, which is not yet happening, right? But at least there is a goal, at least there is an international target that has been negotiated. Oh, and there's a website. So here, let me back up if you want to check out this website at the bottom. So United Nations, fccc.int, and then you can kind of keep up with the news, which is nice. Okay, fast forward to today. All right, well, today, global economies are feeling the negative impacts of climate change. And notice I don't say global warming. And the reason I don't use the phrase global warming is because even though, yeah, that's one of the big things, it depends where you live, how you experience that. Right now in South Africa, right now, like last week, there are terrible floods occurring. Floods, okay? And meanwhile, and Dubai as well. And meanwhile, in other parts of Africa, like Malawi, there is a terrible, terrible drought at the same time. So when we say global warming, it doesn't really connote what's really happening depending on where you live. And that's why I prefer the term global climate change. That's just me. Capital investments are gradually shifting to renewable resource economies. When I first started rising up in some leadership roles in the Second Nature organization, I got to meet the venture capitalist who funded Elon Musk. And we had a couple of nice visits at a conference in Arizona. And it was in startup mode, the Tesla factory, really startup mode. But she was really excited because she said, I'm now, it's so much easier for me to line up investors to manage asset portfolios that are based on renewable energy economy because of companies like Tesla. And she said, even though Elon is really hard to work with, right, which we all know this, but still, I mean, that was a shift. And that was probably about, I'd say, 8 years ago when I met her. Around, 9 or 10 maybe. But that's not the only. It's not just about EV vehicles. It's also about batteries and battery storage. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a little bit. There is a worldwide acceptance that climate change is here. Yes, we do have skeptics. We do. I totally agree. But worldwide, many people just acknowledge it's here. New tech is attempting to mitigate the situation, and I'll give you some examples of that in a few minutes. Okay, peace, prosperity, and climate change are intertwined. This gentleman here, he is Dr. Sultan Ahmed Al-Jaber, and he was sort of the dignitary over the COP28, which was held in Dubai. Okay? Now, this had a lot of criticism. Why do you think this was criticized? He's an oil, and this is an extremely wealthy country. This is an extremely wealthy man, and that wealth was made from oil. Okay? So it was it was a kind of a sharp criticism. But I think it's great. Personally, I think it's great that it was held in Dubai. I think it's great that the Arab world is leaning in to mitigation, building resiliency, and getting away from non-renewable sources. And I'll talk to you about that in a moment. So, and there's also sort of a worldwide acceptance that's happening among wealthier groups in the United States as well. Okay, so what does peace have to do with it? What does peace have to do with it? I'm trying to remember which slide I'm on. Okay, good. Well, environmental justice. And when you think about where we've kind of gotten the resources we have, whether it's through mining, which is also very water intensive, by the way, so water is an issue. whether it's resources related to just land, needing land to put a big pipeline, right? Who gets hurt in that process? Well, sadly, there's a lot of evidence worldwide, not just in North America, but worldwide, that companies find it a lot easier to rape the land when poor people are living on it. It's just easier. Because frankly, people in poverty are struggling to survive, and they don't have a lot of time for politics or activism. They're just trying to feed their families. I mean, you've got countries where women are still carrying buckets of water for drinking, for laundering, for cooking, all of those things. That takes a lot of time out of someone's day. You can't just like turn on the tap, right? You know, but that's what's happened, and this is not a recent phenomenon. This is probably a phenomenon that's been going on for hundreds of years, thousands of years. When you think about the indigenous peoples, and particularly indigenous peoples in North America, who, for many indigenous tribes, sustainability doesn't have to be talked about. It's a way of life. It's a way of thought. It's just the way, right? So some of us who aren't indigenous peoples, we're sort of catching up to that, right? Versus thinking 7 generations ahead. So, and at TMCC, we've started doing land acknowledgements at almost every ceremonial event. And it's really beautiful to kind of acknowledge the lands where we are at and who is sort of, who has cared for the land for so many years. Okay. Lack of potable water and water wars. This is a big deal, and I'm telling you, this is a big deal in the U.S. Places like Arizona, who rely on the Colorado River for water, places like Las Vegas, oh my goodness, what are they going to do, right? Well, do you think a place like Las Vegas, with all the capital and the money and the fun adult playground, I go to Vegas a lot for my job, do you think they're just going to say, oh, we're just going to run out of water? No, they're going to find a way to get water. Right? And so we either collaborate, we share, we conserve, or it's going to get nasty. There will be conflict. And that's the other thing. How would you define conflict? Does anyone have anybody, if you took a communication class, intercultural communication, you should know what the definition of conflict is and what triggers it. Scarce resources. There's not enough time. There's not enough money. There's not enough energy. There's not enough water to live, right? That is, it has all the conditions ready for war, not peace, right? So one way to have peace is also to try to manage scarcity in a way that's proactive and in a way that respects humans, creatures, and the planet. The lasting effects of non-renewable material use. Oh my goodness. I mean, we're going to be dealing with these effects for hundreds of years, and this problem worldwide was really significantly created, you're talking in 1910, right? This is not something that was created 500 years ago, and as people, we didn't realize it, right? This was science, technology, innovation, Fords, right? All of those fun things. Electricity, yeah? Microwaves, right? Lots of plastic. Oh my goodness. At TMCC, we're on a mission this year. We want people to stop using water bottles unless they absolutely need to. Like, okay, you're traveling on a long trip and you need to have water bottle. Okay, we get it. But if you're on our college campus, we've got hydration stations. We want you to reuse your water bottle. I told my office 2 years ago, stop buying plastic water bottles for guests. Get some glassware, you know? Go to Goodwill and buy some glasses and some pitchers, and let's just like live this, right? These are little things that can be done that can make a big impact. And by the way, if you're my age, we didn't have plastic water bottles. We just had drinking fountains. I'm surprised we didn't get sick of disease, but you know, in the parks and, you know, touching those drinking fountains. Carbon is a big deal. And so anything that you can do to reduce carbon is probably good. There is technology relating to carbon capture. Some of that shows promise. But the problem with some of these technologies is it costs more energy to do the technology than the output. And that's what scientists are battling with. Food systems, and I'll get back to that in a minute. I've got a cool video on that. But food systems should be very concerning because of the connections to water. Okay, we are the voices of change. So what's that? And this is the role of higher education. We are the voices of change. Let me make sure I've got my notes. And the question for you is, what is your role? Whether you're a student or a faculty member or a community member who loves this college, what is your role? And how big can you take this? How big can you take this? And it is great to start personally. You know, I had to buy a new outfit today because my luggage is in China, and I am not kidding, okay? I'm not kidding, right? But it's really important if you don't have to buy new clothes, if you can recycle your old clothes or take good care of your clothes, because, and I'll show you a slide about this in a minute, even wearing new things a lot, there's a price that the earth is paying for that, right? Okay, so here's how you can get really active. There's a national organization called Second Nature. They are the voice of public and private higher education, and that's how I got to go to COP, right? That's how I got to go. And they provide help for colleges and universities to be better at, it's hard to be completely carbon neutral, but to use energy better, to figure out, you know, reduce your plastics. We are a bee campus USA now. We're raising bees in a garden, our community garden, because there's a connection, bees, honey, the world, life, you know, all of that. So there's so much you can do, particularly when you get students and faculty involved. And this organization has lots of materials and tools and a couple of conferences every year that people can go to and really learn a lot about how to make a difference in this world. And what's cool about this conference for me is the universities are there too. So, you know, you've got the community colleges, which are sort of new to this scene, and then you're sitting with the president from SUNY Stony Brook or Harvard or Arizona State University, one of my favorite universities when it comes to taking climate action. It's a wonderful campus. If you haven't seen it, it's a great campus to visit. And you start realizing that there's great power in collaboration and learning from one another. They partner, and this is, I love this, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, they started partnering with a thing called the Intentional Endowment Network. These are asset managers. So I went to 2 years ago at a conference. I'm sitting around a table, and everybody was a lot younger than me, and I accidentally sat on the asset manager table. So these are young people they've got bachelor's degrees in business and finance. They're managing portfolios for investors, trying to make them money, right, through good portfolio management. But the difference with these folks is they're intentional. They're what's called B class. They only want investors who care about climate change, okay? So I'm sitting with these young people, and one of them was really young and quite bright. She says, "Oh, yeah, we do have shares in Exxon at my company." I said, "Really? Why?" "Well, we spend $2,500 a year in shares, and that gives us privy to the board meetings. So then I go to the board meetings, and I listen up, and I listen in, and I complain, right? I want to know what Exxon is doing, because that makes my company, with the investors who care about this planet, more savvy and more ready to figure out the next innovation or the next tech that they should be investing in." It's fascinating. Those are the interactions that give me an enormous amount of optimism, and it's great. Okay. And by the way, this young woman was already managing a $500 million portfolio. I mean, yeah. Okay, we raise awareness through college. That's what we do. It's one of the things we do best. And it's not just the faculty that do that, although kudos to faculty who do that, but it's the students. You take that message and you share it with your families, share it with your friends, get some people to come to college, right? You know, and we are lifelong learners. People will go to college repeatedly nowadays for different skills, different competencies, different viewpoints, probably the most important of all. Campus efforts to help our planet survive. You can do so much. I had a printed version of this, but it's in the luggage, so we're improvising. So I'm like, oh, okay. Curriculum is huge. And it's so great that 60 faculty are involved in the Peace Institute, because there will be overlaps and layers between peace and climate action for sure. Building resiliency in our community. Do that through workforce training programs. I mean, we've got workforce training programs in advanced manufacturing, and you wouldn't believe what's going on in terms of advanced manufacturing totally shifting in the US to renewable energy or renewable energy products that really will make a difference in this world. And that's that one. Equity and social justice. In the climate movement a couple of years ago, we started hearing this phrase being used interchangeably with climate activism, because there is such a strong connection between social injustice and the non-renewable economy that now a lot of people are trying to repair. And I will actually tell you that it's not just people like me who are trying to repair it, but companies are trying to take responsibility. More companies, and they're doing it for two reasons. One, because the guilt is finally getting to them. So yay, you know, that's great. These companies need to start helping their planet. But secondly, there is an economic advantage at this point in the world, because consumers worldwide are starting to demand that folks who have power and who run these corporations take some responsibility and make this shift for our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren and all the creatures in the world, okay? So this is all happening at the same time. Is it happening fast enough? I don't know. I'm not sure. And you should be concerned when I say that, because I'm the most optimistic person I know. But I do though that there are efforts. These efforts are happening. And I'll give you some examples too. Okay, so I get a badge and I head to Dubai. Okay, and COP means Conference of the Parties. And this is a kind of an international term, Conference of the Parties. Okay. COP is divided into two zones, the blue zone and the green zone. The blue zone is where the conference is happening, where international leaders and negotiators, they all come together, and they have, there's a big meeting room with the microphones, because it's like the United Nations, right? It's like a model United Nations. There's panels, very professional. Everybody's wearing suits, even though it's really hot and you're really sweating, but it was fantastic. I saw Hillary Clinton walking around. I heard reports of John Kerry, and Al Gore was there, but I missed him, okay? And those are just the American dignitaries, right? Then you've got leaders from all over the world walking around at COP. The big question for this year's COP was, okay, which of you rich countries, including the Arab countries who are the wealthiest in the world, which of you wealthy countries are going to help fund these poor countries who are really suffering the effects of global disaster right now? Who's going to pay? Who's going to pay to lower the percentage of carbon that we emit by 2%, according to the Paris Accord? Who's going to pay for that? And that's what they spent a couple of weeks talking about, very slowly and methodically, because it's very formal, okay? And I didn't watch much of it, but I saw a little bit of it. I participated in panels, which was really fun. And so this was the first panel over here. We've got Gina McCarthy, she was the energy czar. Now she's leading the America is All In climate change movement, right? And I don't remember all the names, but gentleman at the end was a mayor of a city. That guy's a VP of Mars Candy. And they've done a lot of stuff around sustainability. So if you do like chocolate, I would highly recommend Mars. And then I can't believe I'm forgetting on her name, but she is of the Quinault. She's a tribal leader in Washington State, which was really cool. This panel was an education panel, and this is the president of SUNY Stony Brook and the VP of Sustainability from Yale, and then Tim Carter of Second Nature. And Tim Carter does a really great job herding us cats, and he got our badges for us, and he facilitated our ability to be on these panels that were live streamed and attended by small audiences, because it's all kind of pavilion style, but it was really fun. Okay, university partners and international efforts. I really loved this panel. This was put on by Monash University, which serves 100,000 students in Australia and Indonesia. And we were comparing notes. Well, what are you doing with your university? And what are we doing at your community college? And what's the difference between a community college and a university? Well, in some ways, we're identical. Liberal arts transfer, right? But we also do workforce training. And the Biden administration and the Congress passed a little thing called the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, which is a terrible name for what it is. But how many of you have heard of the IRA? Okay, just a few. It has billions of dollars of help for companies and other areas connected to companies, including community college workforce training providers, to move to a renewable energy economy in the US. And by the way, if you didn't know it, we subsidize oil through tax dollars. We've done it for decades. It's bad, okay? And I'm not saying you subsidize it when you put gas in your car. I'm saying that the federal government, on top of what you pay for gas, uses our tax dollars to subsidize oil, because that's how expensive it is for American companies to produce, okay? So what the IRA is doing is saying, look, we've been subsidizing those darn oil companies for decades and decades. Why don't we subsidize those techie people who are doing things that are based on renewable energies, like the sun or the wind, good batteries, okay? And so that's what the IRA is all about, and it's pretty thick. The woman to my right is Nicole Esepi. I do remember her, because she had been on the job about 8 months as the new Jeff Bezos of Amazon Foundation Earth Fund director. So, hey, he's becoming philanthropic. Whoa, that's kind of cool. And by the way, I asked Tim to pitch an idea to her, and that is, we let our college help Jeff Bezos figure out what to do with all those darn boxes. We really should have recycling points for Amazon so that we don't have to throw them away, or we shouldn't even be recycling them. If they're in good condition, we should just be bringing them to a place that Amazon can just reuse them, right? And let us figure it out. We'll see. I don't know what'll happen. But here's what was cool. Her foundation sent 650 students to COP from all over the world, need-based. There are about 90,000 people in the blue zone. And of those, there were 650 students that he paid for. So that's pretty cool. That's a good start. Okay, and then you had the green zone. The green zone was fun because this was open to the public. With the blue zone, there was high security. You had to have a badge. I mean, you walk in and out, they checked you up and down because there were a lot of important people there, right? In the green zone, it was open to the public, and they have most countries who are involved have an exhibit, and by exhibit, I'm talking a big, huge building, and you walk through it. And the Arab world, it was like Disneyland, and that got a little criticism too, because COP had never been so extravagant. You know, it's the difference between it used to be like Silverwood. This year was like Disneyland, okay, because of the green zone. And I thought the green zone was just fascinating. In fact, this is my first video, so let's see how I think this just kind of gives you an idea.
Dubai is beautiful, and the architecture at the COP Expo Center is so incredible.
Okay, and the architecture was just dynamite. Okay, here's more on the green zone. I mean, check out this building here. That was, I believe, the Saudi Arabia exhibit. The U.S. didn't do such a great job this year, but I don't think they were aware how the Arab world was going to lean in with the amazing amount of financial resources at their disposal. All right, so this is a short little, a couple of little videos just to give you an idea of the green zone.
Sidetracked again. I am looking down into what is called the Terra Pavilion. Pretty amazing structure. There's educational activities here, but when you go up, what
How
you
massive
see,
this is.
many, many solar panels. Serving as
Look
basically
how small the people are.
the rooftop. Look at all the solar panel.
Look at that.
discs
That's all solar.
and the shade it provides to grow green things. My question is, do they rotate with the sun?
And they probably do. They're probably
Probably
designed to move with the sun to capture the
Incredible.
most energy possible. This is producing a massive amount of solar energy. Here's another one. I found Startup Village and Lighten Battery. I'm here with Keith Norman, Chief Sustainability Officer, who's going to tell us a little bit about what Lighten is up to.
All right. So we do two things really well. So first, we have to figure out a way to take methane, a greenhouse gas, and actually turn it into a super high performing material. But we don't stop there, because the real value is when we take that material and turn it into applications. So the first application that we were bringing to market is actually making next generation batteries out of it. Now, why is this so significant? We can make batteries that are twice the energy density of a typical lithium ion battery, but with no nickel, no cobalt, no manganese, no graphite. So we pull out almost all of the mined minerals, and so we end up with both a high-performing battery, a low-cost battery, a battery that can actually be sourced and manufactured locally, and that ends up with giving you a super low carbon footprint to actually deploy energy storage at scale into the EV market.
And that battery's lighter too.
It is sitting at about 40 to 50% lighter weight.
So will cars go even faster?
So
EV cars, that is.
So you get two choices. With a lighter weight, you can either pack more energy in there, which gets you go faster and longer. But actually what we've seen is the bigger demand when we talk to auto manufacturers is they want lighter weight vehicles. In fact, one of our investors, Stellantis, has been very, very public on by 2030, they want to create a 50% lighter weight EV vehicle. And so that's been an interesting, my first thought when we started to develop this battery was longer range, more power, this is gonna be great. And much of the market is saying, I just actually want a lower cost, lighter weight, simple EV vehicle that can really scale in the market. And so that's what we're seeing is kind of the first demand.
Well, and what's fantastic is that you have a presence in Northern Nevada, and TMCC stands ready to help with your workforce needs. And here we are both at COP28, which has been an amazing experience here in the UAE near Dubai. So what is your takeaway at COP28?
So I think what I've been really, really surprised by is the influence of private business with sort of government policy making, and then be that education, NGOs, sort of that next band. This is all about collaboration, and we look at, as we go out and think about how we're going to scale, immediately it's not just we need to go build manufacturing, it's we need to go build a relationship locally to find the right land and find the right policies. We need to go find the right people that can actually, the right education to work in our facilities. We need to think about the utilities. We need clean power. We need renewable natural gas. We need an ecosystem to start to develop. And this is just sort of the exact example of that ecosystem. It's policymakers, it's education, it's private industry all coming together.
It's incredible. And I will say right now, day 3, that's my takeaway. It's extraordinary. The diversity here, not just of roles and perspective, but of worldwide cultures. The world literally comes together at COP to try to save the world. And it's a great experience. Thank you so much, Keith.
Yeah,
it was so great seeing you in Dubai.
And it makes sense to meet here instead of just a few hours away back in California and Reno. But it's been great to see you here.
Okay. In addition, there is an off-site area where only corporations were invited. And somehow Tim Carter from Second Nature got me the invite. This panel was fascinating. This was a panel of fashion industry leaders. And it was so cool. Though there was a lady that kind of got cut off at the end, but their company is also, I think it was Washington, near Bellingham. They're developing fabric out of seaweed, which is crazy. And she had some of it. It was beautiful. So there is innovation going on. And the thing that they talk about the most is the supply chain, the use of sweatshop labor, right, in that supply chain. How hard it is to manufacture a pair of jeans, and the energy that that consumes, right down to the water that's needed to dye a batch of jeans, for example. The fashion industry is starting to think about it, and these are some of the experts leading the way for corporate America. And so this pavilion was all about how can corporate America lead the way. So it was very interesting. Here's some other takeaways. Technology and innovation is real, but it's not enough, and I think the panelists did a great job capturing that point. This was my biggest takeaway, and that is that the Arab world, they've realized, and this is just kind of a fun, this is some of the entrance to the Saudi Arabia pavilion, and this is just a way to celebrate COP. This was the money that was spent to build a waterfall in the green zone, just for fun, right? Again, Disneyland compared to Silverwood. This is my biggest takeaway, though. And again, this is all sort of what the Arab world can afford to do. The Arab world has realized that the days of oil are numbered. What do we do next to maintain our wealth and our prosperity? And speaking for Saudi Arabia and UAE, pretty stable countries in the Arab world, those are the ones with the two biggies, they're going to food systems.
Check out this AI.
This was an exhibit.
Hamburgers.
This is how AI is affecting food systems.
This is the food table of the future.
I wish I could have filmed the whole table. They had a whole table with about 6 settings on it. Very creative. And here's another, the other thing, we focused on climate and human health. This is Samantha. She works with Second Nature and our college. And that was just such a wonderful gathering of people because there's a lot of human illness now that are connected to toxicity, to climate change that has really affected us. Microplastics should be a huge concern. They're totally destroying our oceans. And they're probably in I know they're in your water system because we discovered it even in Walla Walla when I lived there, that there's a lot of the microplastics are leaching into what we think is potable water, but when we really study it with good microscopes, we're finding that there are things in that are probably causing cancer, for example. So all of this is connected. This was probably one of my favorite exhibits. That building that's about a third of it. And this was the UAE exhibit. That's a big wax head of the first mathematician in the Middle East. I forget his name, because again, that's on the plane, and I didn't have time to look it up. But look how large it is. Look where I'm standing. And these wax, Madame Tussaud, they worked with Madame Tussaud to bring these somehow to get them to this exhibit. They were incredible. You start with history, and you walk through this huge building, and it ends with, again, Disneyland, and these two boys imagining a more sustainable city.
And changes for people. Nice. That's not what I meant. Right. How about we go back to nature again? More trees? Not just that, but what if the city...
Imagining the ideal city that the UAE
we also need some changes.
It was very, very cute. Okay, so now I'm going to wrap up. I won't have time for that, but I do want to kind of wrap up with some takeaways. And I was hoping to have time for questions, but it never happens when you have so much you want to show. So, but I do want to say that good health may very well indeed be a scarce resource. And not just human health, but the health of the creatures, who roam this planet, large and small and tiny, right? So health is a big deal. And again, think about conflict in a framework of scarcity, and how scarcity is what can really ruin peace, right? Also, think about your ideal city and what can you do? What can you do? At TMCC, we started by signing a commitment to be more resilient. That was back in 2017. The student president and I, the student body president, we stood up, we signed it, and slowly but surely, faculty have gotten on board. And partly because as president, I give them a little release time to get on board, otherwise they don't have time to be on board, right? And we have student services, a full-time student services person who gets also some time in her day to get on board with this. And those two people have done just remarkable things. And now the students are involved. So we do a number of things around sustainability as an organization, as a college. And we've been nationally recognized by the EPA, by Second Nature, by the state of Nevada, because we're trying to lead the way for our community, right? So start at the individual level, but then ask yourselves, what can we do as an organization? And then what can we do as an organization to help our city, right? And then how can we help Washington State? And then let's all go to the next COP and start talking to other leaders in the world and learn about the technologies that are pretty imminent, right? And some of these technologies are very exciting. But it really is a wicked problem, a complex problem that was created probably over the last 150 years, which didn't take long to create this wicked problem, but that's going to be very, very difficult to unravel. But if we do it right, not only can it be mitigated and to some extent unraveled, but I really believe we can create a better world. Thank you so much. Yeah. Okay.